Boom. How's it going, GGG?
How are you, my friend? Another session, another amazing session.
What up, everybody? I am
GMGM.
Nandolan as I go by these days. The alternate,
Nana Dolan.
yeah.
You got Table. Hey,
Hey,
Table, how are you?
Tabo. Hey, Dev Relevant. Seeing some familiar faces. That's awesome. Oh, I don't know. That's interesting. It didn't actually post to Twitter. Let's see what's going on there. Oh, no. What's going on? I don't think we're getting Twitter people, just YouTube people. Hopefully
Okay.
that's unfortunate. It says a premium account for Twitter is required to create live broadcasts, which we should have still an account there. I don't know what's going on, X. I don't know. Oh, that's a bummer. Maybe we could tweet it out that we're only live on Twitter. That's too bad. All right. Let me get a link for the people that are out there for all of you tuning in on YouTube, you'll see us, but for people that are only tuning in typically from Twitter, they will not see this because apparently it's just not broadcasting live. So let me just go ahead and get that. All right. I'm just going to post that up. All right. Yeah, sorry about that, everybody. Here we go. So we'll jump on in. Yeah, and I'm not even sure that viewership is going through on YouTube either because I only see 3 live viewers here. We're starting to pick up maybe a little bit. Yeah, I don't know why that
Yeah,
it's not
don't
broadcasting.
don't underestimate the time zone change. Probably we need a couple of more announcements to adjust
Yeah.
the daylight time saving.
Yeah, I just posted up on Alchemy University that we're live on YouTube, so hopefully more people will tune in there. Okay, sweet.
Yep.
In the meantime, we'll just go ahead and get started, and then people will file in as they file in. Otherwise, we'll have this recording up and live for anybody who missed it, and we'll figure out the broadcasting issues with Twitter afterwards. I don't know why it would have changed. I feel like that's probably on Twitter's side, not ours. Okay. Let's go ahead and kick this off. So yeah, anything you want to say, GGG? Anything cool? What's the weather like down by you?
It's a great week to continue learning.
Hmm.
So we are going to continue multiplayer world maps. So it's an amazing way to learn how to code games logic, how to interact with smart contracts, server side, client side. So probably you want to do a 10 seconds recap from previous sessions so we are on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the previous streams that we've done game development, we've gotten up to this point where we now have characters that run around the screen. We have an authoritative server that is going to send the game state down to the clients, and then the clients are sending inputs up to the server and then rendering on the clients. It's basically what we got up to. We've also had community members extend the game in the meantime since we've been down, and I'm actually going to start from one of the community members' forked repos here because I think they did such a great job. So we'll see that in a moment. Today, basically, what we're going to do is we're going to move into building tiles in the background. And the main reason why I want to focus on that is to again think about this client-server relationship and how you have to create the collisions. So if you don't want your character to like cross over something, like if there's supposed to be a collision, there's supposed to be like an item or something that they're not allowed to walk over, you need to actually create that logic on the server side. And that's where you're going to do like that validation piece. And then the client, you're going to see that you can't walk on it because the server is sending down the game state saying you didn't move into that location. So therefore, you're not going to see the person moving on that location on the other client. They're not going to see you moving that on your client. You know, it'll stay the same across all the different clients. And that's what we want to get to today.
Sweet. Let's do it.
All right, let's jump on in. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, entire screen. Today is going to be a bit messy because it always is with game development. I want to shout out a few things that have happened since the last live stream. So for one, Talon Dragon, who is self-proclaimed new game developer. She is just getting started learning how to do this stuff. Really excited to get the game up and running. I thought that was super cool. So wanted to give a shout out to Talon Dragon for doing that. We can all get this up and running and play around with it, prompt AI a little bit, and maybe change the game. So we all have an understanding of how this stuff works. Yeah.
Kudos to her.
Yeah, kudos, Talon Dragon. Awesome. And then this one was pretty cool too. If you're not in the Alchemy University Discord, you're missing out. This game is already getting remixed all over the place. So here's a version that somebody created, took some tile maps and then put these down so you could see like a background for the slimes here. And then you could also see they added an animation for the sword. Maybe not the full animation for the sword, but you could see they're attacking the slimes and like killing the slimes. So I was pretty impressed with the work here that they got done, and they got quite a ways with it. So that was pretty cool to see. So shout out to them as well. On Discord, their username is Rahul Rio. So way to go, Rahul Rio. I think that's really cool. And if you could share your code with people, we'd love to see how you implemented that. That was super cool. We're going to do something pretty similar today with the tiles, and we're going to create like boundaries and everything that the character is not going to be able to cross over. Kudos to Rahul Rio. And then also, so Tabo took over here and created this little avatar, which GGG has been lovingly referring to as Nan Dolan, which is, I'm sure there's a word for that. It's like taking my last name, the first letter of my last name and first letter of my first name and switching them around. It does kind of look like me, right? But no beard, right? I usually keep a beard, so I don't know. Tabo, you might have to get a little facial hair on the guy.
We need an upgrade, a version 2.
Yeah, an upgrade. Yeah, his head is a little big too. I don't know. It's just like kind of.
This is baby Nandolan. the level 1 Nandolan, stage 1 Nandolan.
But I was pretty impressed. Tabo said this was his first time doing any sprite artwork. I find this stuff really hard to do, and I was just really impressed that he was able to get this in there and working really well. And in fact, like you can actually just take this character and put him right into the game. It automatically works. It's the same. It's the same coordinates. It's the same tile width and height as the sprite sheet for the main player that we've been using in the previous weeks. So you could just plop them in. And Tabo also minted this character and put him on Shape Sepolia. So this will be really cool. This is something that we can actually tie into the chain here. And you can see we have some token name Dan Nolan. And if you would like to mint yourself some Dan Nolan, you can come out to this contract address here and you could call Safe Mint. And maybe we'll do that next week so we can actually tie this to on-chain data. This will be like an unlockable character. And maybe this unlockable character could have like a different move set or something like that, right? So that's pretty cool. So maybe the Safe Mint, and we'll talk about this a little next week, maybe there's something else that you can come up with where you can distribute an unlockable character via some other mechanism. Like maybe you sell the unlockable character, or maybe you have some sort of a game that people have to win. And if they win that game, then they can unlock the unlockable character and then sort of move over. If you want it to be any value, you have to do some sort of like cheat proof mechanism there so that bots can't like just infinitely mint these things. And we'll talk about how you can potentially do that as well. Cool. So Danny Mole, I'm going to mess up your last name here, Mavihil, also did something really awesome, which is he took the project and then he added some stuff here where we're actually going to start right off from this one. He added a character select screen. So we'll see that in a moment, what that looks like. Maybe we'll actually pull this down right now so you guys can see it. A character select screen, so you can actually either choose the character that Tabo created. So now there's multiple people working in here, right? We've been creating the game on the mainstream, and then Tabo created this new sprite sheet, and then Danny came in here. Another community member came in here and added a character select screen and a little player tag on top of them so you could see who's who. So let's actually go ahead and just clone this repository so you guys can see what that looks like. I was very impressed with this one as well. So let's do a git clone into, we'll call this like our working session. I'll eventually merge this back into the main repo. because as you'll see, Danny just had one commit here and it's pretty clean. So I want to make use of what he's done and kind of extend from there. So let's call this our working session and go ahead and pull this up. And just like our code, when we're pulling it up, we have our client and our server. So we're going to have to do the same thing that we did with our client and server. We're going to split the terminal. And we're going to go into the client. And we're going to do npm I. And then we're going to go into the server. And we're also going to do an npm I to install all the dependencies there. And I'll zoom in a little bit for you guys there. Hopefully that's a good view, but let me know GGG if I should zoom in once more. So both of those have installed, and then we run dev on both sides, server and client, and we should have ourselves a character select screen. Look at that. You could either be character 1, which is the character that we've been using up to this point, or character 2. Man, this is super cool. This is what, collaborative world building could potentially feel like, right? Where you're building something, somebody else remixes it. And you can imagine if people are enjoying this, that like they're enjoying seeing these worlds develop and they want to like play these games more because we've created cool battle mechanics. You could actually see them like interacting with the smart contracts, and everybody will get like paid for creating a fun game that keeps growing and growing and growing. So that would be super cool and exciting. So let's call this one Nandolan. And you can see there's Nandolan there, right? And so if we create another one over here and we do, let's call this one GDG, and we'll join as GDG. There we go, right? There's GDG and Nandolan. So now you can actually tell your character apart because he's got a little user tag there. That's super cool. Well done, Danny. That's awesome. Super shout out to you. So we're going to make use of Danny's work here and just start off from this spot right here. I think that's super cool that now we have a character select, because that's immediately something you could imagine being an unlockable piece of content that you might want to share with folks, that you might want to actually have something on chain. Have you actually unlock this character or not? You could imagine doing something similar with like all kinds of different NFT collections where maybe you want to pull in a community from a specific NFT collection. So you make that unlockable character, and then they can play as that character, anybody who owns that particular NFT. And maybe it even renders their character, right? If you can get the sprite sheets out there for them. So we're going to start from there. So thank you, Danny, for your work on that. Super awesome. Also, if you guys are looking, just so you know, if you're looking for all these events, everything that we're going to be doing for Shapecraft, you can now go to shapecraft.xyz, which comes here to this calendar. So that's a really easy way to find the calendar. And this is going to have everything that we're doing as far as workshops. So all the ones that we're talking about, but also some other ones from other parties here as well, teaching like VRFs on chain and teaching about dynamic art and world building with Tim Shell from Loot. So definitely some stuff that you'll want to check out. And you can find all the recordings of the previous ones up here as well. So if you're looking for those, you will find them there. Awesome. And with that, I think we can go ahead and jump in. Yeah, any questions or anything, GGG, that we should?
No, we are fine. Great. Thanks for all the contributors for the project. Dragon Table, Def Relevant, and Danny. I think that, and Raul.
And Raul. Yeah, great job, everybody. Super impressed. And keep it coming, keep expanding on this. What we build today, we'll definitely have some things that we want to get you guys to work on in advance of next week, because we're really going to pull these two worlds together in terms of creating one world and another world, and then having a chain that sort of like connects them, right? Having these worlds that have a smart contract worlds on chain, and then having your game servers that are connected via the data. And that's really what we want to get to here. And you guys are more than welcome to use this as your starter project for the hackathon. I would definitely encourage that for anybody who's trying to build something similar for the hackathon. Cool. So what we need to get into next today is I want to talk a little bit about building the maps for this game. And the reason why I wanted to focus on this, there's a few different things that we could focus on for game development. But the reason why I wanted to focus on this specifically is because it's going to give us a little bit more of a look into what it's like to develop both on the client and the server side. And I want to just like sort of hit home on a lot of that stuff, because I think once we do this part Everything else from here, yeah, it's difficult to do game development. It always is. But everything else from here should have been like covered in these 3 videos in terms of like thinking about the client and the server, thinking about like where you're going to store all of your assets, thinking about like how you're going to do data sharing across the client and the server, but also the chain when we talk about that next week. So basically, all the fundamentals should be laid for anybody who wants to sort of build from here. So tiled, what this is, and we're going to see it in a moment, you could download it. You go to mapeditor.org, and you're going to find this. It's a free piece of software that you can donate to at any time. It's a game development piece of software where you could put tiles on a sheet, and it's actually a really powerful piece of technology. It at first, for me, when I was first using it, I thought it was kind of frustrating because I would run into a lot of things that were actually kind of difficult to use. But as you start to learn it, you realize that it's actually just really powerful, and so there's a lot of things that it can do, and there's a ton of shortcuts. So I've been increasingly impressed with this thing. And you're going to find some great, if you end up building maps with this thing, you're going to find some really, really great resources on YouTube and tutorials online that you can find and go deeper with it, deeper than my knowledge of it as well. That's going to make it much easier for you to build maps super, super quickly. So we're going to use this. If you want to come out here, you can download it and follow along as well. The last thing I'm going to call out is we are using this asset pack for the video. It's called Mystic Woods. It is a free asset pack for a portion of the sprites. I think most of the sprites that we use in these videos are free. But then if you want the full asset pack, you have to pay for it. So just so you guys know, this is out here on itch. As you can see, it's $2.99. Paid for it pretty recently. So I just wanted to sort of shout out Mystic Woods for attribution, but also if you want the full asset pack, you can find it out here. Just search Mystic Woods itch, and you should be able to find this asset pack out here, and reward the artist for doing great work if you want to use this for your hackathon project. Awesome. So that's everything. Cool. So download Tiled if you want to follow along. If not, no worries. I'm going to open up Tiled here because I already have it downloaded. And what I'm going to do is I am going to start a new map, a new project inside of this folder that we just created. So we just created a folder called working session, which is what I'm going to work off of here. And then I'll merge everything back into the MOW episodes that we have up on GitHub. So working session is where we're going to start off here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new project and I'm going to save it in there. So we're going to go up to repos, and then we're going to go to working session, and then we're going to go to, so, okay, this is kind of interesting, right? Where do I want to save my project? So when it comes to a map, this is where we're going to start to come to like architecture decisions. And you can really sort of do this however you'd like to do. But the map files, the things that get exported here, are going to have to land in both the client and the server. Why in the client? Because the client's going to need to render the stuff, right? It's going to need to know what your map looks like so it can show the user, hey, this is what the map looks like, right? And why the server? Because the server needs to know where stuff is so that the user is not allowed to like walk over something that shouldn't be walked over, something that should have a collision, or like if it's an object or something that they need to interact with, like that sort of stuff needs to be incorporated into the game logic on the server side. So therefore, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to create another folder up at the top that I'm just going to call assets, and I'm going to store it here. Maybe that's not the best name for it. I guess it depends on whether or not you have like other assets up at the top, but that's just what came to me at the top of my head. So none of this is set in stone, but this is definitely one way that you can go about it so that we can like have the project up at the top level and then move all of the artifacts of the map building into our client and server folders accordingly. So I'm going to name this our level, and we're going to jump on into it. So I need a new map. And so that's the first thing that you want to do. A map, there's a couple different orientations for different game types that you can do. We're going to do orthogonal here. And then there's different formats for the way that you can export it here. We're just going to do basically the defaults here, except for the tile size. If you'll notice when I was on Mystic Woods just a moment ago, it said that it's a 16 by 16 tile map. So we want to like also keep our tile size the same there. And I'm just going to increase the height and width. I would avoid doing infinite if I were you. You can definitely use infinite where it just like it's going to be as big as you want to create it. But what infinite is going to do is it's going to like chunk it. So it has a bunch of different chunks, and the idea is you're supposed to like load it like dynamically as the character moves around the screen. I think it's a lot easier to just work with fixed maps. But depending on what you're trying to do, maybe you want to go with infinite. That's another way to go. So awesome. This is our map here. So what we could start to do with our map is we could start to lay tiles, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to get a new tile set. What I want to do is I want to bring, so this new tile set, one important piece here is in the browse, we're going to go look for images that represent the tiles that we want to lay, right? We want to put some grass down. We want to put some trees down. We need tiles that are going to be, those tile sets, the grass and the trees and everything like that. So the Mystic Woods asset pack includes a tile set, includes a few tile sets. So I'm going to go over to it. I have it downloaded on my desktop, and I can go into sprites here, and I can go into tile sets, and I can go to planes here. This is the one that I'm going to want to use. If you look at planes, can we zoom this up a little bit? Yeah. So this is what we're going to use. We can get some grass here, for like a little patch of land. We can get like a little island here, which maybe this is what I want to use so that we have like some collisions here on the side. Because unless your character can jump off these ledges, maybe they're not allowed to, right? This might be a good thing for us to collide into. So this is what I'm going to want to use. Now, one thing you do need to be careful about when you're setting this project up locally and when you want to share it with other people is you want to take these tile sets and you want to make sure that they're included within your game, right? This was on my desktop, so I want to actually just bring this over into my game, which I have up on cursor. And let me just move this over here. And we will, the tile set itself, so this piece right here, this image only needs to be included on the client side, right? The server actually doesn't care what the image looks like, right? Because there's no reason for the server to care about like what the images actually looks like. The only thing the server cares about is like, what are the properties of these different tiles? Like, can the player collide with them? Can they interact with them? Like, is it an item that they can pick up? Those sorts of things you'll want the server to know about. The actual image itself, it doesn't really matter for the server. So I'm actually just going to put this over into the client side, and we're going to put it into assets. And let's just create like a, we'll call it like a maps folder for now. Again, naming is tough because you have to think about where this is eventually going to go, but we'll call it maps, and we're going to put our planes in here, and there it is right there. So we're going to make use of that on our client side. And then now that I'm building the maps over here inside of my project, I want to refer to that file in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into desktop repos, and then we're going to go into working session, and then we're going to go into client assets, maps, planes, pull that up over here. Cool. So there's our planes. It's going to be 16 by 16. That's good. We don't need a transparent color. Yeah, we should be good to go there. So, and then we're going to save this. This is going to be a tile set file. Do we need to save it? Wait. Oh, wait, I see. Okay. So this is one other thing that you want to be careful about. I see what it was doing. So one other thing that you want to be careful about is phaser on the client side. This is an issue I ran into. So this is one other thing that you want to make sure to do is you want to embed the tile set into the map. This is going to make it so that you don't have to like reference these files together. Phaser actually doesn't support this as far as I know. I'll show you what I mean when this exports, but we're going to want to actually embed the tile set into the map, and we'll see what that looks like. So let's just go ahead and pull this up here. I'll save it. Okay, cool. So let's start playing around with this. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Okay. I'm just going to lay some grass, right? So there's a bunch of different, like if you use like a paint program, this right here is like, a filler. So you could fill it, a bunch of spaces with it. So if I wanted to switch over here, I could switch over here. If I wanted to turn this into dirt instead, I could turn this into dirt, right? So it's a big filler. There's also like the shaping tool. So if I wanted to like lay down like a siding here, right, you can see I'm like kind of creating a square. Oh my goodness. There we go. And then we want to, I'm just going to create like the borders here of our map and then not allow the player to go off the borders by making these like collidable tiles. So we'll take a look at how that works. Sweet. And, oh, what did I do? We'll fill that in there. And we'll do this. Okay, cool. So, yeah, a couple things to note. So if you wanted to create like another island on top of this island, right? So if we were going to take, so the stamp tool right here is what I want to do. If I wanted to stamp this island on top of the island, you can see it looks a little funky, right? Because it's getting rid of the grass. It's sort of replacing it. If we wanted to actually do something like that, what we'd want to do is we'd want to create like a new layer. And then on top of this layer, we would actually fill in new islands, right? So then you sort of have like the layer beneath. And then if you've used layering programs like done like Photoshop, stuff like that, this is probably pretty familiar. If not, like, yeah, you're just like creating that base layer and then building something on top of it. And we'll have to, on the client and the server, account for the fact that there's multiple layers here so we can keep track of that. So maybe we'll do, yeah, just a few islands like that. There's a whole bunch of other advanced features that you can do, like terrain sets. That's going to make it easier for you to like draw this stuff out. You can learn about that again. Like I said, if you look up tiled YouTube videos, you'll learn about this stuff a lot more. But for now, I just want to do like collision type stuff in here. So, okay, this is our map. So for our map, this is going to come out and we'll see what this looks like. So I'm going to save this up inside of the top level assets folder. And I'm going to call this level.tmx. And let's just take a look at what that file is that we just created, because this is going to be important. So when we're doing this all ourselves with code, you are basically able to do whatever you want with this exported data, right? This is the data that's going to be exported from tiled. And what this is that we're looking at is like all the metadata around everything that we would need to know in order to import this into our game. Tiled isn't like specific to Phaser. It isn't specific to like any other game engine, right? It is just something that you could build these assets with, and then it exports them in common formats that game engines support. In our case, I'm just going to be pulling in a lot of this stuff pretty manually, and then we could use some of this stuff on the Phaser side to like render it on the client side. On the server side, we're going to have to do all of this ourselves, but fortunately we have AI for that, so it's going to be really easy. You could see here that one of the things that it has is this like image up here. It's referencing the planes to our folder here. So that's what I meant by like making sure that you put your image inside of your project, because if somebody else is downloading this project somewhere else, you want to make sure that this source matches up the same way, right? So that it can find that image. If I reference this to my desktop image, you guys wouldn't have that on your machine. So when you go to pull it down, it wouldn't actually work. So you want to be careful about that. You want to make sure that this is like referencing a file that's within the repository there. Cool. And then what all of this is you may already sort of guess it based on the structure here, but these tile numbers correspond to specific tiles in the tile map. So this is like the border of the map, right? You see everything here is grass. 33 is like the tile for grass. This is like all the upper border. This is like the upper left border. And then this is the left border over here, right? So this is actually like when we take this combined with the image itself, we can come up with a way to basically show Phaser, hey, this is like what the map looks like. And then take the tiles, ripping them out of this image, and then like rendering them over this CSV formatted thing here. Cool. So that, and then you see that there's a second layer here, right? So this is the first layer, that's the bottom layer. And then the second layer here, you can see we've created those little islands, right? And these are the islands. There's again the grass one, but then there's like borders around each one. You can see 0 is for everything else. So it's not actually something to render there. There's no tile. Cool. So that is our top level folder. What we need to do from there is we need to export, and this is where you could definitely come up with a better way to do this stuff because we are building this for the client and for the server. You may want to come up with some sort of automation that every time you like export this file, it automatically like saves something into the client and saves something into the server. That's something that I'm gonna like leave up to you guys to try out and try like maybe the automation in tiled, or maybe you want to do something with like a build server that recognizes when this is built and then like move it in there. I'm going to leave it up to you guys, like whatever works for you the best way. I really just want to focus on like the fundamental collisions and everything like that. So everybody has a different way of like wanting to set up their projects, but yeah, this is like the basic fundamental structure. And then what we're going to do from here is once we have this map, we can export it. And one thing to note here for Phaser is that it wants it in JSON format. So that's actually like when you go to pull in the map, it wants it in a JSON format. So we're just going to save it as a JSON format. You can come here, and that's one of the formats that it'll export to. And we're just going to call this level.json, and we're going to save this into maps over here. And then we're going to do the same thing for the server. So again, like I said, like this is not the most smooth way of doing this stuff. Like I think you could build automation into tiled itself to automatically save something to both the client and the server. But for now, you'll see me doing this on both sides whenever we need to change the map. So we just exported it to do two different places. So if we come back over to cursor, we'll see it over here in our maps. So this looks like a very similar thing here. You can see the data, and that's like the actual building of the map there. You can see the height, and it's not an infinite map. Like I said, I didn't want it to be infinite because they sort of like chunk it up, and that changes the way that it work. And its name is tile layer 1, and then this one is tile layer 2, and then you can see it's referencing that planes.png, and we have that on both the client and the server. So the client side, the first thing that we want to do is we want to just render this on our game. So that's what we should start doing. We're going to go ahead and render it on our game. So one thing that I think we should do first before we dive in too far is maybe just take a look at what Danny has done with his repository, just because that was all done, by community member Danny, not by me in the last live stream. So we want to make sure that we see the differences here. Maybe the easiest way to do that, I mean, you could see that this is already some of the differences, but maybe if we just take a look at like the commit history on Danny's, let's see. I think he only has one commit over here, so we could just see like what has changed, and so we're familiar with it. And then I'm just going to reorganize this a little bit. So you can see what Danny did here. He has like this player name, and then he has this function called start game. So the game doesn't actually start until the character is chosen. What Danny did here was he created like a form and a bunch of like DOM elements, and then like appended them to the page, which was super, super manual, and didn't do any sort of like React or any sort of like framework or anything like that. So I'm pretty impressed with this. It was quite a bit of work here to get this working. So kudos to Danny. You can see that there's like radio buttons and everything that we're able to like select the character. I want to move this into its own separate file, so that way, we don't have to look at this every time that we're trying to change game logic. And then I'm going to just do a couple things to just like clean up the project from here. And I'll just show you how I would do that with like AI. It's important, I think, as you're building this out, not to get too ahead of yourself. This is just like building a project yourself without AI, right? Every time that you like build something, you want to like sort of sprint towards a feature, get it to the point where you want it to be, and then take a look at your code base and be like, okay, wow, this is a mess. Like, how can I make this code base a little bit better? So when I go to add the next feature, it's a little bit smoother, right? And you want to sort of like do that in parallel. That's how I typically work on this, because you don't want to get carried away making your code base look super brilliant and amazing. It's kind of like premature optimization. But on the other side, you don't want to like get carried away with just implementing features. Then you end up with like a hairball of a project. So, and that's kind of where we're at now, because all this is just inside of that game.js file. So the first thing that I want to do is I just want to move this out. This was a really great piece of code, and we'll do a couple things here to just clean up the project, and then we'll move from there. So let's do that. So this game.js, I want to do a few things. So let me tell AI what we're trying to do exactly. Can you please break up this game file into a few different files? So for one, we'll want a config. So this config should be sort of separated, right? And then we'll want a scene, our main scene. So typically the way that Phaser works is there's a bunch of scenes. So right here you can see that this scene has a preload, a create, and an update. Typically Phaser, you can have many different scenes, and then you sort of put them all together and you say which scene you want to load up first. So you can actually go from scene to scene to scene. And I think it's useful to make use of like these baked in features of Phaser. So we're just going to like create our separate scene where we could create the preload, create, and update, and have it like a class structure, which is what Phaser is used to usually doing. So we'll want to create our scene, a main scene as a different file as well. We'll also want to rip out the create name input logic into its own file to run before the game starts. And I think that's pretty much it. If we could do that, it'll clean this up at least enough where it'll feel a little bit more manageable for the stream. And then, I'll leave it up to you guys to like clean it up a little bit more from there. But you could definitely do stuff like this, like let's reorganize it. Or even like, I find it useful sometimes to ask the AI just like, hey, do you have any tips for how I can organize this project? Could be kind of useful. So definitely do that. So cool. Yeah, that's what I wanted is see, this is the game config here. You can see that it's creating the scene, the main scene. I think you could also do scenes where you do with an S here, and then you do an array of scenes. But we only have one scene right now, so it makes sense to do that. So we're going to say game config. We'll go ahead and put this in here. So that's perfect. And then create a constants file for the sprite options. All right, whatever. Yeah, constants file. I did tell it to break this up, so we'll listen to the AI here. I don't know if that's really necessary, but that's fine. I guess if you wanted to do a bunch of other players, that's going to be kind of useful, right? And then you can name them all whatever you want to name them. Character select is going to be its own sort of file here. I like that name. I don't know about the casing here. Character select as a, let's call it create character select.js, because that's really the function that we're creating. And it is telling us to add all the functionality here. So we need to make sure to pull that over. Then it's also creating a socket service. So it decided to abstract that out. That's fine. That makes sense to me. Let's put the socket in its own file. And then the main scene is going to be all of this. And it did not fill in all the code. So we're just going to have to pull that over. And then the game file is going to end up looking like that. So let's just pull in all this logic before we finish the game file, which it did not do for me. It needs me to go in the create name input, take all of this and put that into the create character select. Oh, that's cool. Okay, so it did like this promise resolve here. Let's see. So how did it end up doing it? Okay, that's kind of cool. So it actually, for start game now, it's calling await create character select. And this promise resolve is set up so that it's returning a new promise, which is going to tie right into await async. And then it resolves after we get the emitted data back from the server saying, okay, you've connected to the server. Here's your player data. So I really like that. Let's make sure that we don't overwrite any of the logic here. So I just need to go back to the game. And for the character select, so it has the button there. It has not any of this stuff after creating the name form. So that's the only thing that I need to. Cool. So I really like that. That's a smart move to turn it into a promise. So first the character select is going to happen, and then we'll do the game start when we're doing that. Sweet. So this stuff should be gone now. This sprite options, all this stuff, because we're going to, we don't need that. The config should be gone, right? The socket should be gone. That's pretty much out there. Now we just need to pull over like the preload. This is going to go into the main scene. Now you can see main scene is set up like a class, which is typically the way that you'll see phaser scenes working. So we're going to put all the preload stuff in here. We are going to take the create stuff and we're going to put this in here. All these animations probably would be good to like put somewhere else. I don't want to like look at that every time, but that's all right for now. Let's just go ahead and take this. What did I copy from? I copied from inside there. So let's go back over to main scene. Cool. And then we'll do, last but not least, our updates. And we'll take this on over to my main scene. All right. I'm kind of scared. I feel like it's probably not going to work. But, we can always figure it out. Right?
It will work.
Yeah.
Our faith is on you.
Oh man, it said, would you like to provide the complete code for any of these files in particular? Yeah, all of them. Come on. I'm on a live stream. All right. That's okay. I copied it all over, so I think we're good. Yeah, I think this is going to work. Maybe. Let's see. No. Config, game config. You know what it is? It probably told me where it wanted to put some of this stuff, but I didn't. Let's see that. So config. All right. And then it had UI character select. Okay, that's fine. All right. I just didn't look at the folders that it wanted me to create. We'll have to see if there's anything else there. So game config is going to go into config. I like it. It's really starting to organize stuff for me. That's nice, right? And if we're going to have more UI, you could even imagine, right? Like when we get to the point where we're incorporating on-chain stuff, we may want to do more of a UI where you can import and export characters out of different worlds, in which case it might make sense to like turn this into a React app and like, have a Connect wallet and like whatever we need to do there to make this actually work. So we'll take a look into a little bit more of that next week. But for now, let's just pull over the create character select and see UI. And do we have anything else here? The constants, where do the constants come out of? So it expects the constants to be in config. That makes sense to me. What else do you want? You want socket to be inside services. All right. That's kind of cool. That's a cool name. I feel like people are good at naming folders and stuff. I think that makes sense. It's like a service. Yeah. Good job. And then does it want scenes to be in main scenes or inside of like a scenes folder? Yeah. All right. Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. If we wanted to add more scenes, we put it in the scenes folder. This is starting to look a little bit more clean, which is really nice. So hopefully that'll all work okay. And we'll see. Nope. Okay, so it's saying, is that actually the issue here? So let's just rerun here to make sure. Okay. UI character select from, okay, so it's saying it can't find UI character select from game. Because I renamed it create character select. That's right. Oh, look at this. Okay. Let's do GDG. And let's do nan. All right, sweet. All right, cool. It's the same exact functionality, but now it's cleaner, right? We actually have it. So now we can get to the part where we actually want to do some stuff, right? Which is where we want to render the tiles in here, right? We have this new tile. We have the images, and then we also have the map laid out the way that we want it to be laid out. So now we're going to tell AI to basically help us with this. So we want to modify the main scene here. The main scene is where we're going to do most of this stuff. So we're going to want to modify the main scene to load the tile set, load the image, create the map, do all that stuff. And instead of having to go look up documentation, this is something that's really good for an AI. So let's go ahead and do this. Can you please load up the let's load up the assets inside of client, both client assets map, so that we have a tile set and then we can render it on the page in the game. Anything else that we want to do? Oh yeah, make sure to render both layers, right? Because there's two layers. So we want to make sure that it knows about both of those. And it should be able to look up the information to find the names of the layers. So I expect that this is going to work okay if I give it the global context. So if you guys are just using cursor for the first time, you can sort of do control or, depending on your Windows or, command if you're on Mac, and then you can press enter and it'll give it like the global context of your project. And then it'll learn everything. So here it was actually smart enough to find the level JSON and the planes.png. And I'm betting that it could probably do this pretty flawlessly. So let's just go ahead and apply. So it's loading the sprite sheets here. So you can see it's loading the image for the sprite sheets and it's loading the JSON data. That's the metadata there. And then what it's doing inside of create is it's actually making the tile map. And then it's adding this tile set image. And then it's creating both layers. And then it's setting the scale. I think that's probably the default scale anyway, but fine, we'll keep that. And I think that's it. Cool. So let's go over and see if we have, oh, this is kind of annoying. So we have to select our characters every time. We might want to like if we get into a debugging mode, we might want to just skip past the character select. This also might be something to keep track on the server or maybe hold into the database is like whenever this character connects, maybe put something in the local storage of the browser so that anytime this person connects, they load up with the same character, right? Eventually, we'll want to have like a wallet associated to this person. So they'll connect via their wallet, verifying that they do indeed own that wallet address. So let's go ahead and do, oh no, I don't see a map. So that's problematic. Let's see. Tilemap.json is not a function. Okay. This dot load. Wait, where's that? This dot load tilemap.json inside of the main scene. Load tilemap. Okay. It's saying this is not a function. Can you do the latest phaser version? So typically, it can get lost between these different versions. We're just going to add this to chat and see if it knows what the issue there is. Okay. Tile map, load tile map tiled JSON. So really it's just looking for that tiled thing there. So I guess there's different types of tile maps. And so they created new functions there. So just something to watch out for. Okay. Yeah. All right. GGGH. Oh, look at that. Okay. We got ourselves a map. One problem here is it's not really following the character, right? The character kind of like disappears off the map. So we might want to like have it follow them. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I want to do, can you follow the character as they move around the screen with the camera? And let's see what it does there. So in the main scene, it'll figure out how to do this. Oh, it's keeping track of the local player ID because it's rendering multiple players, right? So it needs to know which player to follow. It'd be kind of cool if like there was like something that you needed to do where you followed somebody else, right? But the camera is going to follow your character. So it needs to make sure that if this is you, then start following that character because it's going to get back from the game state a bunch of different players, right? It's going to get back me, GGG, everybody else. So it needs to know which one to follow. So it's going to keep track of that local ID to be able to do that. So we're going to apply. So it's going to know the local player ID. And so we'll accept that one. Set it to null. But once the character has been selected, then it's going to want to set the player ID. Maybe we want to tie that into the character select function. But here it's actually doing something pretty interesting, which it's like checking the player data against the socket ID. Which I guess works. So we'll do that. All right, let's see if that works. Oh man, this character select, we might want to, ooh, look at that. Cool. Okay, we're following along. And we just see like black out there in the distance. You could also do something if you wanted it to, where you could say like only render or only follow the camera until you hit the boundaries of the level. If you didn't want to see like blackness outside of this. And if you guys are wondering whether or not GGG can walk right off the end, he can. There he goes. And he's not falling. He's not infinitely falling. So maybe we want to make it so that he can't, right? We want to make this actually like a collision here. so that he can't walk off the edge, and then he can get this close, but that's about it. That might be nice. And yeah, and maybe the slimes too, right? If we can get that far. But I think just getting one collision here would be good enough. And then I would love to see people remix this and add the slimes, so the slimes are all over the place, add the sword animation so we're killing the slimes, all that sort of stuff. So let's get this so that we can do the collisions. The collisions part is the part where we now need to incorporate the server side of stuff, so that way the server knows that you can't move over here, right? Because otherwise, if we had another character connected like Dan, and Dan like changed his client side code because he's uber hacker or something like that, and he decides on the client side like I can go over these islands, if you leave it up to the client to decide, then GGG is going to see Dan get up on the island. He's going to be like, how did you get up there? And Dan's going to be like, I hacked the client side. Don't you know how to hack client side? We got to put it on the server side, so that way both players play by the same rules and we have validation, that sort of thing. So cool. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to get it over to the server side, and then we'll be in good shape. So I'm going to do a really quick sort of hacky way of doing collisions. There's sort of this like collision editor that would be a little trickier to do, but it's kind of cool. And I have not incorporated this in. I don't know where it is actually, but you can actually, you can look at the tiles specifically and you can sort of create like these little polygons to say, here's exactly where I want it to collide. But I'm going to be a little lazier than that here, just so that we can like get this going. And I think this is like perfectly fine for a game of like, what we're trying to accomplish here. Where what we do is we can go to this tile set here and click edit tile set. And then if you go in here, you could just tell, you could create properties on the tile set itself and export them from tiled and then read them in on the server side and say, is this a tile that we should be able to walk over? And then say basically no, right? So we could add a property for like all of these right here, which is the outside. Like the grass is fine to walk over, but everything else is not. So we could add a property like called collidable, and we can make it a Boolean. And we could say these are collidable. You will collide with these, right? So if you click on this one, it'll say collidable. You click on this one, it's not collidable, right? So the grass is something that you're allowed to walk over. Everything else you're not. Of course, that's going to lead to like some weird stuff right now. Like I said, like you can get very exacting with where you want the collision to happen. I'm not going to do that level of work right here, but when you want to do like polish to your game, you definitely want to get up to that point where like it looks nice. Your character is coming right up to the edge, but not quite over it. So here, I'm just going to say, don't allow the character to walk over these. So that's not going to be perfect, but we'll see a pretty good job from this. Cool. So collidable, true. So what do we want to do? We want to export it now, right? So we haven't changed what the map actually looks like. So I'm actually not worried about exporting it to a client side at the moment. I just really need to export this to the server side, because on the server now we need to know that there is, we're in the client, here's the server. We need to know what's collidable, right? So if we go into what's being exported here, you'll see that there's these IDs for these different tiles, right? And so we saw 25 inside of our map. It's one of the borders, and it's saying collidable is true. And so we'll need to read this in on the server side to basically make sure that the player can't walk on this particular tile, but they're allowed to walk on 33, which we know to be like the grass tile. So 33 is fine, but all these other ones, all these border ones are not okay. Like 27, 26, all of those are like border tiles that they shouldn't be able to walk over. So we need that logic to live in the server, so that way all players play by the same rules and it's validated on a machine that we have access to, and that the players aren't able to manipulate themselves. Okay, sweet. So what we're going to do here is we have this game state, right? This is pretty good. We got in a decent state. But what we need to do now is we need to set up collisions. So let's close out of everything except the game state. And we're going to ask for a lot of stuff here. So let's ask for a lot of stuff. Basically what we want at this point. So what can you help us Well, me. It doesn't know I'm on a live stream. Maybe I should have told it. Can you help me render, let's say, oop, can you help me import the level.json into the server side here? Maybe through a collision, a level class that handles collisions. It should look up both. It should look up both layers inside of the level.json, looking for tiles that have the collidable property set to true. If it's true, then we want to make sure that the player is not allowed to walk on it. Sweet. So I think that's actually pretty good. Let's try that out. I'm going to give it the full context here. It might be nice to just like, I wonder if you could like break it up so that you can give it server context versus client context, because it doesn't need all the, okay. So it has this like level JS. That's kind of what I was looking for here, was like creating a level JS. I like that name, kind of. It's kind of like more like a map collision editor thing here. So you can see it's building this map. Hopefully it's only doing that at initiation. It does look like that's true. So when the level is created on the constructor, it's building this collision map where it's like filling in an array, and it's going through each of our layers, and it's creating like this data set of a bunch of layers that you're not allowed to walk on for the player. So it's like building up the data, and it's doing it taking into consideration the actual size of the tile set and doing all of that math that we don't really have to worry about here. This is kind of nice where like, yes, we're doing a lot of manual stuff, but we're not really doing it. The AI is. What's nice is this code is like there for you. So if you need to edit any of this stuff for some reason, you can like go in and do it or ask the AI to do it, versus like importing a library where the library is kind of like, you may be able to configure it from the outside, or you might have to get into the source code, but this can give us exactly what we need, which is super nice. And then we have is colliding. This is the function that it's probably going to call from the outside, which is going to take the X and Y coordinate for the player, and then it's going to do a little bit of math to see, hey, is this actually hitting the boundaries of this character here? If so, let's, or actually, that's interesting. It's going to check the world bounds, but then it's also going to return you the actual tile that this character is interacting with. And this collision map is going to have inside of it either true or I guess probably false by default or something falsy. So if you hit a tile that is indeed one that you're not allowed to walk on, then it's just going to say true. Otherwise, it will say false. So over here inside of the game, now what we can do is we can apply this. So let's see. So let's close this. Let's close something out. Okay, so it's pulling in the level into the game state. Let's accept that, and then it's doing. I kind of want to go back because I want to accept each one of these little piece by piece. Okay, I'll accept that last. So what it's doing here is you can see it's doing a little bit of like calculating the new position ahead of time. This is probably having to change the way it's doing calculating position, because before it was just allowing you to move wherever, but now it's going to calculate the position first and then check to see if you collide. If you're colliding, it's not going to allow you to move to the new position. So you can see if it's not colliding. So if this returns true, then it's not going to allow you in here. Otherwise, it will allow you to move to the new position, and then it's going to do all the animation stuff from there. So everything else can remain the same, but the main thing it needs to check is, are you colliding with something you shouldn't be colliding with? If so, you're not going to be allowed to move. Cool. So that seems pretty good. I wonder. Yeah, it's just teaching us, but I think we're pretty good there. All right, so that should restart the server. Let's see if, oh boy, okay. We need to do a little bit of work on how it connects from the client and the server when you are, but hopefully this is working okay, and then we don't have to worry too much about that here. But hopefully for players, if like the server restarts, it handles that more gracefully. But let's see. Oh, look at that. I can't move on here. You guys are going to have to, oh, what the heck? I think that's because it kind of looks like I'm on there, but I think that's just because like maybe the collision's not quite right. Um, it's like it's probably not taking into consideration the player height. I would assume that that's like the problem here, right? Because it's like letting me get on there, even though it seems to understand like a little bit of like I can't walk off here anymore. Can't walk
Just
over here.
just change the island by a chair, and you will be fine.
What's that? Change the item by your chair?
Yeah. So you can sit on that moment, and the collision will be fine.
So,
Yeah. You are
oh,
sitting on the chair,
turn it into a chair and let it.
sofa
Yeah,
or something like that. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you guys could work on the math a little bit here to make that collision work properly. I think the problem here is just that it's not taking into consideration the height of the character. I think it is finding this to be the proper collision. Like this tile is not letting me on. It's not quite right. You can see down here, right? The bottom collision isn't quite right. The top collision looks kind of clean, but you would also expect this character would be able to walk up closer to that, right? Because like their feet aren't hitting the edge. The head is hitting the edge here. So maybe there's like a little bit more of math where we need to like, let them get much closer to the edge, but not quite up there. So this takes a little bit of guessing and checking. So, you could take a look at like the implementation and try this out a little bit here, but this is polish at this point. So I don't want to bore you guys too much with this stuff. But if I were going to jump in here, you could ask AI certainly to adjust it and tell it what the behavior is, or we could take a look at like what's going on here. So is colliding, let's see. So it's going to call is colliding, sending over the new X and new Y. And it's just sort of taking the X and Y and then checking whether or not we might want to like do some sort of offset here. So the issue with the Y, it's really coming in with the Y. That X seems to be fine, right? Like when we go left and right, that seems to be okay. The issue is coming in the Y. We almost want to like maybe, I don't know whether to add 16 or minus 16 here. You gotta be careful with these like magic numbers as they're called often, right? But like in this case, like that's like, well, Dan is actually kind of a big character. Nan Dolan's big character. Let's just try this and see what happens. It'll maybe make it worse or maybe make it a little better. But you can kind of like play with these things and sort of figure them out. That made it worse. Okay, so we actually want to like plus it. So let's try it this way. No, we don't want to do X. Okay. Okay, that's a little better. A little better, right? I think we actually want to do a little more than that, right? I'm not going to be perfect here, but let's try 24. And you could get more specific with your characters, like where you want them to collide. You can even like edit the colliding on the map itself, like I was showing you guys. But this looks pretty good. Like he's kind of like
Perfect.
walking up to it. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Sweet. So not quite where we wanted to, and not quite the game that we initially built, but pretty close. We're getting there, right? We have a character that runs around, it's got collisions. You can have multiple characters. We have character select, which is not something I had in my game. So that's pretty cool. Sweet. Yeah. Any questions or anything that came up, GGG?
Not on the chat. I had one quick question. Just to recap. When you're using tile for creating the map, you need to create a specific, let's say, graph and convert it in collision spot. There's nothing like a new layer where you can put over the map and say, okay, this zone is not walkable and this zone is a teleporter to another map or something like that. It's not on tile,
You
right?
can do that, right? So we have
Okay.
we're basically building all the functionality here on server side, right? Like server side, you'll notice we're not really using any libraries, not any gaming libraries at least. Like all the server logic is being built by us or the AI, mostly the AI. But like you have full flexibility here to do whatever you'd like. And so GGG, in that case, you were asking, like, could you build a layer that's just like a collision layer, right? You just sort of make everything on this layer something that you can't walk over. Definitely. And you can even, in tiled, you can even edit the layer specifically to add properties to the layer. So you can, from tiled, tell, I think I avoid that because it's a little harder to tell when you're going and editing the map later. As you know, like viewing the map, it's a little hard to tell which layer is your collidable layer. And you can kind of, here, I'll show you real quick, because it's a good question here, but you can kind of like hide the layers. So if you guys have used like layer tools, you're probably familiar with this sort of stuff, but like you can hide the layers like this. So if you were just working on a collidable layer, you can hide the other one and kind of work like that. So if that's better for your workflow, then definitely do that. You can see when I'm clicking this tile layer 2, you can come in here and put like custom properties for the layer itself. So I could actually make this layer a collidable layer. And then that way, you know, my layer 1 is just the ground and it's never collidable, right? And we click that, there's no custom property there. But if I click layer 2, then there is a collidable layer there. You could do that, and then you would have to incorporate that into your server logic.
Awesome.
Sweet.
We got a quick question on the chat. I will let you answer that. The short answer is no. We are not going to make it fully on chain because different topics that we discussed before. But it's on you, Dan, to answer.
Yeah, I would check out the first recording. So you can go to shapecraft.xyz. That's going to have all the recordings that we've done. The first episode, I talked about the intro to Web3. I talked about the idea behind partially on-chain games. I do think that there is a huge benefit to fully on-chain games, but I think that like scalability-wise, I think it's a difficult thing to do. And I think that like there's a lot of benefit to partially on-chain games. And so I talk about that in that episode. So definitely check that one out. So not everything's going to be on chain. However, what is going to be on chain, we just talked about it yesterday. So from the previous recording, is going to be the smart contract logic and obviously the smart contract logic, the logic that is going to help game developers collaborate in such a way that they are incentivized to work together. So that if a player is playing on your world, and I have a world myself, and GGG has a world, there's an incentive for us to like work together and implement your items for each one of those. So that's what's going to go on chain. And we're going to like read from the chain like a database from our server side. So basically the chain is what it's doing. You could think of it as it is coordinating game developers, right? At the end of the day, like kind of like how Bitcoin coordinated miners, coordinated people to run the Bitcoin network. In this case, in this idea, the chain would be coordinating game developers to work together over the same data set, and they would be paid for doing that. That would be their like monetization is if you implement this item and players move it into your world, you'll automatically get paid via gas back.
Sweet. And last one from TD.
The properties would be where we can add interactables to. Yeah, there's also like in tiled, there's when you go to create a new layer, there's also like object layer. And so you could specify like if you want to have like a treasure chest or something in there, and you could specifically put that in there. And I think there's a couple other features when you create an object layer. But yeah, that's where you would add them in there.
Awesome, Dan. Was a great session today.
Sweet. Cool. Well, thank you all for attending. Hopefully people will catch this recording because unfortunately it did not go live on Twitter. But thanks everybody for sticking through. And yeah, have a good rest of your Thursday, everybody.
See you all next week. Bye-bye.
See you, everybody.